Welcome all to the channel all about economic board games. Today I'm going to be giving you an overview of this game here, Chicago Express, a bit of an older one, 2007. We can see the designer at the top there, and it's brought to you by Queen Games at the bottom. Now this is a 2 to 6 player game. I probably prefer to play at that sort of 3-4 player count and higher. It takes you roughly 60 minutes plus, and it's a light to medium complexity game. So in this game we are investors in the late 1900s, investing our hard-earned money in these 5 companies. There's 4 there, and then there's this black company here which will come out later on in the game. You'll be trying to invest in them to develop them as you see fit, and hopefully get the most dividends on this income track here. A little sort of clever way that sort of figures it out, and most money is the winner. So the first thing you'll all be doing is auction off these shares. So the start player is going to pick the red share, and they're going to start the bid. Now the bid always starts with 7 on the red, and then the blue one's going to be 6, yellow's 5, and green's 8. And this is the absolute key to the game, is this auction phase. This is where you can be royally screwed as such if you don't get it right. If you spend too much money bidding on, say, this red share, which is one of the scarcer ones, you might not have enough money to bid on these other ones, and then you'll find that someone else will come and swoop in later on and get a red share, and you're like, oh my days, that someone's on an equal parry with yourself, and you're trying to figure out how you can diversify and figure out how to get more dividends than everyone else. So you'll start off with an auction phase, and maybe you'll get 1 share, 2 shares, depending on how many your player count is. This one's a 2-player set. Once that's happened, the bulk of the actions, well, there's only 3 types of actions, is on the side here of these cool little sort of revometers, and I'll go through what the actions are then. So the top one is about undertaking another auction. So that first player is going to maybe go for red. Second player, whoever wins that auction is then going to auction off one of the others. So once all the 4 have auctioned off, that first player who has red, by the way, in this case whoever has red is going to be the start player, and they decide, right, we're going to auction. So you move this little dial to show you've used that action. You can see there's only so many actions here. There's slightly more actions there and slightly more actions there. Now the auction is basically doing exactly what you do in the first round. They make a bid, and the bid is determined by how many shares are out there. So let's just say this player here already has a green share. They've won in the first auction, and they want to do an auction for another green share. So that's 2 shares in play. You'd figure out the starting bid. So basically 8 here on the income track divided by the 2 gives you 4. So they bid 4. You can bid straight away high if you want. You can go 12, something like that, and then the next player clockwise will go 13 or 15 or whatever they want to bid. If you pass, you're out of that auction round, and then it basically highest bid will win that, and the money from your personal investments, you can see you've got your own funds here, will go into that particular company just at the top here, and that is the money you will be using to develop these tracks and trains and go on all these different hexes on the board. Now if you go for a particularly low bid and that's kind of accepted, then the companies aren't really going to have much money to use for development, so you kind of want to bear that in mind as well. So that's a bit about auctions, and you want to get these shares. Now interesting in this game, slightly different, you're only getting money for the dividends, which I'll go through later in the dividend phase. You're not actually selling these shares at the end of the game for a sum of say 20 or 30 or 40. It's only the dividends throughout the game, which is slightly frustrating in some respects, because you've spent all that money trying to get it, but actually the crux of the game is focusing on how much dividends it's going to pay you throughout, which determines kind of the auction price you're going for. The second action here is development, which is basically putting these houses onto various spots of the board where you've already got one of your trains, and you can see this sort of little outline. You can put it there on the mountain spots. You've got these industrial spots, or cities should I say. You can't put it in, you can put it on one of these forests as well. And final action is actually putting out some trains. You can put up to 3 trains, and again when you do an action you're going to be moving this. So I should probably say, let's look at the board then. So you've essentially got this all these starting cities at the side here. You can see these are always going to be the same every game. So Baltimore, that's where the Blues go, and that's sort of the name of the company. And you're basically, you don't have to head to Chicago, but it's kind of in your advantage to do so. You're going to be advancing through these hexes, paying costs, and as you get through this sort of the great Midwest here with the forests and the mountains. Is it the Rockies maybe? And then you can see right over here is Chicago, and it's got a +7, which will make a bit more sense shortly. And Detroit's quite tasty up here as well. That's got that little plus symbol, which refers to this industrial track. So that's the board. You've got a host of hexes from forests to mountains to cities, and these 3 industrial spots. So there's one at Wheeling, one at Pittsburgh, and there is the one at Detroit, which match these 3 spots here. And I'll kind of explain a bit more about that in a minute. So let's give you an example of some of these options. So let's do the putting out, developing a train track. So literally, you have to have at least one share in that company to do so, and you take up to 3 of these shares. Let's just say blue in this case, and you're going to go, right, I want to go one here, and one here. Now you can see, looking closer at the hex, it's going to cost you, anything in red is a cost to the company, not your personal funds. So you're going to pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you pay your 5 at your company in this one here, blue, and there would be money there if you'd had a share. And you're going to gain whatever the +1 is in the train symbol. So you'll notice all your cities, all your mountains, and all your what they call forests have certain paint. Well, actually, no, some of the forests don't have paints, but the cities and the mountains, you're going to get +1s in this case. Some of them go higher. Let's have a look if I can find one. They're usually a bit further over. Actually, maybe they're all +1. I know, here's one, Indianapolis +2, and as Chicago's +7. So what does that mean? You're going to go up on the income track. So we chose blue, so we're going to move blue up 1 on the income track because we've come to this city. So basically, you pay your costs in red, you go up, whatever this little black number is. Now, this one here refers to if there was one of these buildings. So if you'd have put that building, there's no cost to do so. You just have to choose this action, but you'd automatically get +1 for the company that's there, and then anyone else who comes along would take advantage of that. Now, in terms of where you can actually go, you can have as many of these company trains. So, for example, let's just get a red one. You can have a red one on here, that's fine. You can have a red one on the city, that's fine. You can have a red one on the industrial spots, as many as you want there, in terms of you can have 2 or 3 companies or up to 5, whatever you want. But you can only have a maximum of 1 on the forests and the mountains. That's just sort of one of the rules there. Now, as well, you can also gain income and money from different ways. So if you did put a house on here, you're going to get $2 straight away, which is great. And as well as the one we've already said, where you go here and you get this income. It's a slight difference. That's improving your income. That's giving you money straight away into your company. You might desperately need it if there was some low auctions. And on these ones then, so what's this plus symbol? So referring back to this track at the bottom, that when you put a train on, say the first person's put one on Wheeling here, you're going to get, what is it, 3 income increase. So you go at 3, and then if someone wants to develop that spot, so they use this action here, you just, rather than putting a house on it, you automatically just increase that. And if there's any train, any railway companies on there, so let's just say red and blue were on Wheeling, both of those income tracks would go up by the difference from the new one to the old one. So from 3 to 4 is a difference of 1. So red and blue, if that was the case, would go up 1. Now you can see Pittsburgh's slightly different. It's got an increase. So every time you develop it, it's going to go to that one and that one. And the difference is a 2, so slightly more lucrative. And Detroit, at the end of the round, which I'll start figuring out how you do that now. So when you do an action then, so let's just say this person's done auction, this person's done a bit of developing, this one's raised some tracks. You can go on any order you want. There's no limit. But once 2 of these hit red, that ends the round as such, and you go on to the dividend phase. And what you're going to do then is you're going to increase Detroit 1. So you can see you're going to be limited to 8 rounds max if you don't trigger it on the other methods I'll explain. But this is where you're going to actually get dividends for all those shares you've acquired. And the way you'll figure that out, let's just say blue's on an even number 20 here. If there was 2 blue shares out, and I'll grab them, so 2 play again, they both happen to have a blue share. Now you're going to figure out what dividends they're going to get paid. So 20 divided by 2 is going to be 10 each. You get that money into your personal supply, which gives you a nice little pot to be sort of bidding and auctioning on these the next round. If it was, for example, 19, you divide it by 2 and then you round up. You always round up, so in that case it would be what, 9.5, so rounded up to 10 still. So you do that for all the companies, you get your dividends, and then literally you reset all these back to green, and then you would have moved this F1, which you've already done, and that is it. You carry on. Now, the way this game is going to end is when you have either 3 of these piles have been diminished, including those, or 3 of the shares have been diminished. So, all these have gone, etc. So 3 of them. Or if this Detroit little token gets to 8, that's going to trigger game end. And there was one more when you have only, it's 3 houses or less on these, and then you basically play it out until you do the next dividend phase, like we explained. So basically when 2 of these are on the red, and then most money is the winner. Now, going back to this Chicago area, the first company to kind of get there triggers what's called the Chicago phase. And what will happen is you'll add your income of 7, but you'll pause and add the, focusing the Warbush, if that's how you pronounce it, company, which is here in black. Now, they've only got 2 shares. They kind of only really come out late in the game. And what that means is you take one of those black trains, you pop it on here in Warbush, and they are now involved in the game, and an auction will take place. The player who put it there from that company will bid 1, just the minimum bid you can bid, but they could go for whatever they want. And then this company comes into play, and they're involved in the mix as well. So that is pretty much the game. As I said, you're trying to invest your money as astutely as you can into these companies, and that auction phase is just massive. If you get it wrong, you're on the back foot constantly. And in terms of the board, are you going to diverse at the top here? You can see there's some nice cities with the red outlines giving you sort of +2 in this case. If you get your development on there, +1, are you going to kind of come down and try and avoid some of these costs of going through the forest? You can see it's quite pricey here, -3, -3, -4, whereas these are only -1 to go on those hexes. You're going to try and get to Pittsburgh, quite pricey, but these industrial spots are really nice if people develop them again and again. You've got the mountains, -4, -4, so some expensive ones. So how are you going to determine your route? And remember, if other companies are getting there first, it's going to cost you, I don't know if I already mentioned, but double. So you could go to this spot, but it's going to cost you, 2 for the first player, and this player comes here, that's 2 trains. It's going to cost you times 2 is 4. So extremely expensive if you're late to the game and you have to pay those costs. So that is pretty much the game, folks. If you are after a better insight, I'll be doing a run through of this game next week. Enjoy, folks.